today?
Speaking of celebrations,
Yeah.
we have had a lot of girlfriends stop by recently to the studio. So I'm into this tea party, and not necessarily traditional tea party themes, but let's get together, have lunch in Heidi's studio. So I'm into the mood of creating a theme for the parties. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to take the same fabric that Heidi used for her beads and turn it into a little table setting?
She wouldn't be on there. She took some of my leftover beads.
I know, wait until you see this. For this project, I am using the Aleene's Fabric Fusion. Now this is a permanent dry cleanable fabric adhesive. I'm also using the Aleene's Peel and Stick sheets. These are no-sew, permanent, and washable. I have cut my fabric for the napkin to the size that I want, and I have ironed over the edges. And the next thing that I want to do is apply my glue. This is my wet glue. And I just used a little tab that goes on a file folder to use as my squeegee to squeegee the glue. This just helps to give you a nice flat application of the glue. And I'm just going to turn that edge over and press it into place. So be sure that you get glue in the corners where you fold it over so that that holds your corners down. And sometimes you have a little bit of extra fabric when you turn that corner, so be sure that you fold that in a little bit more so you have a really nice clean edge here. And just press that down. So you're going to let this dry. You can accelerate the drying time by ironing this real quickly, and that helps to set that glue a little bit faster. So the next step on the napkin is to actually cut the Aleene's Peel and Stick sheets and apply them onto the back of your fabric. For the pumpkins, you just need to use a circle template, and you'll notice that there are two different sides to the Peel and Stick sheets. There's one that's more of a matte paper and the other side is glossy. What you want to do is be sure that you draw whatever pattern that you have on the glossy side, because that's the side that the adhesive sticks to. If you draw it on the paper side and then you peel that off, you won't have a pattern. I do put the circle pattern onto the Peel and Stick sheets first because that gives me an idea as to what size fabric I'm going to put it on, what size circle that I need. So just in this particular project, I just went ahead and put that circle onto that glossy side of the paper. So I'm sticking this onto the back side of my fabric. So this is double stick, permanent, no-sew, washable adhesive. It's really cool. So you just want to cut along that pattern line. Roughly in a circle, and I say roughly because it really doesn't have to be perfect. The next thing I'm going to do is just take a little bit off the top and bottom to give that more of a pumpkin shape rather than a circle. So go ahead and do that on all of your pieces. And what you have to do is lay them out onto your napkin and decide if you have enough pieces. So I like to do that first, and I'm going to overlap these, so I want to be sure that I've cut enough pieces to be able to fit all the way across, and I have plenty. You'll also notice that I have these up a little bit from the edge because we're actually going to cut along that edge, and so I want to move them up from the edge. So now that I know that I have enough pieces to go along the edge here, what I'm going to do is start removing the paper. I just give it a little bit of a tear, and the fabric doesn't tear, but the paper backing does. So that makes it easier rather than just picking at these in order to try and get that paper off. You know, sometimes when you it takes several minutes to try and get the paper to release because you're picking at it, just give it a little tear and that gets it started to help you take that off completely. Now this is very, very sticky. Because the Aleene's Peel and Stick sheets are no-sew, they're created to be very, very sticky, so keep that in mind and try not to touch them too much while you're trying to place them down. So take all of that paper off and continue to line up your pumpkins. And you notice that I like to turn them just a little bit, gives it a little bit more interest rather than having them all lined up in a row. I'm going to put this one that way. And let's see. I'm going to overlap these a little bit more towards the end here because one is not quite large enough to go all the way to the end. And so I have to overlap two. So once again, just peeling that paper back. And the pumpkin is very sticky. And let's put this up a little bit higher so I get a nice intriguing edge there. And one more to go. Perfect. So now that I have my pumpkins all lined up, I do want to come back and glue down all of the little stems and leaves. And I like to place them out first to decide where I want them. So I'm going to finish laying these out and glue these in place. All of my pumpkins and stems and leaves are now glued onto the fabric, and I used the Aleene's Peel and Stick sheets to do this. Be sure that you rub along the edges of your pumpkins and your stems and the leaves to make sure that they're adhered down firmly along those edges, because the next step, what you're going to do is start cutting along the edge here. So just take your scissors and start following along the pattern of the pumpkins. It doesn't matter if you cut away a little bit of the pumpkin fabric when you're cutting along the edge. And because you use the peel and stick sheets, it's holding the two layers of the fabric together so that it won't fray. I think that just adds a really nice handmade creative touch to the edge of my napkin. At this step, if you wanted to, you could use the tulip dimensional paint if you wanted to outline your designs. I actually like the look of this napkin the way it is, but if you'd like to add other embellishments or paint, any sort of fabric paint technique, that this would be the time to go ahead and do that. So basically your napkin's complete, and what you want to think about is what you might use for your napkin ring. And I was so inspired by Heidi's necklace. I thought that a variation on this would be fabulous for a napkin ring. So I would create a shorter version of her necklace and simply make the ring large enough to loop around my napkin. And I think those rolled fabric beads that coordinate with my little pumpkin patch make a really adorable setting for the table. So don't you think it's a great idea to celebrate every day and have a little themed party?
And be happy.
Be happy. Be
My
happy.
happy necklace.
And I was so happy when I walked into Heidi's studio and she said, "Oh, I have some extra beads. Do you want to use them?" And it's like, yeah.
She didn't just take them.
No.
They were extras.
Right. So it was perfect because it matched with my fabric, which was Heidi's. So I went shopping in Heidi's studio for my project
That's
today.
not very hard to do, though. I think we do that a lot, don't we?
We do. And of course, I was inspired by a tablecloth that you had made for Christmas time that had along the edge of the tablecloth were these beautifully shaped ornaments from fabric. And that's what inspired me to make my little mini version.
But actually what I did on mine, and you don't have to, but I actually outlined it with dimensional paint. And the reason I remember that is because I remember that tablecloth so vividly, because at that time I had a cat that was in my studio, and I had this tablecloth laid out on the ironing board. I had just done all of my dimensional paint on every ornament. She jumped right in the middle of it, and as fast as I could lift her off, I did, and she didn't touch one. She didn't get her paw in one single bit of paint. So that is just like my favorite memory of her in the studio. So that was cool that you did that.
What I love about your technique is that if you have a little bit more time to let the paint dry overnight, I'm usually planning my parties at the last minute.
Yes.
So it's like grab my Aleene's peel and stick sheets, put that fabric on, and let's go celebrate.
But that's the cool thing about nowadays too, is that it's a brand new product. It's a fabulous product. It's when we don't have that much time to create, it's quick, it's easy, and it's done.
You know what story we haven't shared yet is, I don't know if you had this same, no, this is a really good story. I don't know if you remember this. Mama Aleene would make us craft gifts for Halloween.
Yes.
So Heidi talked a little bit earlier about Halloween not being her favorite holiday. Well, I remember I would have to sit down and craft, and I'm sure you were involved with this. Because what Mama Aleene made us do is when we would go trick-or-treating, we had to give them a treat. And so we'd go to the home, knock on the door, say trick-or-treat. Well, we'd have to give them a treat before they gave us a treat back.
Right. She felt that if they were going to give us something, that we had to treat them and give them something. And so we did. And I think most of the time it was wrapping those hangers.
Yes, you do remember.
Yes. It was wrapping the hangers in that bumpy chenille.
Right. So what we would do is take a wire hanger and bump chenille. I don't know how many people remember that, but chenille stems, but it had a big bump in it. You can probably find it in vintage sales.
Actually, they still sell some of it.
They do.
But it only comes in little pieces, and we used to get it by like 10 yards.
So you would take that and you'd wrap it around the wire hanger, and it was beautiful for nice lingerie.
Right.
And you put little flowers at the little neck of the hanger. Well, how many homes do you go to on Halloween? 25.
And you have to drag all these really cool little things that we're going to give to the people. But so I'm sure they look forward to us every year coming to their house, because we always gave them something to get a candy bar back. It was really cute.
I think it's a really neat tradition. Of course, for us as kids, it's like, oh, Mom, I don't want to have to go craft 50 hangers. But it was a really great way for everyone to celebrate.
And
Halloween.
it taught us something too. We don't just get. We have to give.
I like that.
I do.
That makes me happy.